The offering plate is coming down your row, and before it even reaches you, your mind is already doing the math. You think about what's in your account right now, the bill that's due Thursday, the balance that's already tighter than you'd like anyone to know. And when the plate finally reaches your hands, you feel that familiar tug, the one between wanting to give and being afraid you can't afford to. So you give a little less than you meant to, or you skip it this week, telling yourself you'll make it up next time. And as the plate moves down the row past you, a quiet thought settles in your chest. I wanted to give more, I just don't have enough. Friend, if that's you right now, I want you to hear something. That tension you feel, the pull between generosity and fear, is one of the oldest tensions in the human heart. And Scripture doesn't shame you for feeling it, but it does have something remarkable to say about it, something that might completely change the way you see your open hand. Because there's a story in the Old Testament about a woman who had less than you probably have right now. Not tight, not stretched, nothing. A single meal left between her and her son, and starvation waiting after that. And in that exact moment, with everything on the line, she was asked to give away the very last of what she had. Today we're going to talk about generosity, but not the version that only shows up when you've got extra. We're going to talk about what it means to give from an open hand even when your hand feels almost empty, and why Scripture insists that generosity was never meant to wait for abundance. By the end of this, I want you to see giving differently, not as a math problem, but as an act of trust. Here's what's happening to so many of us, and maybe you already recognize it. We've quietly adopted a rule that nobody actually taught us in Scripture. The rule goes like this: I'll give generously once I have enough, once the emergency fund is full, once the debt is paid off, once the raise comes through, once I feel secure. And on the surface, that sounds responsible. It sounds wise even. But here's the problem. That finish line keeps moving. The moment you hit the number you thought would make you feel secure enough to give freely, a new number appears just past it. Enough was never really about the number. It was about a feeling. And feelings like that don't arrive just because a bank balance changes. Ask anyone who's actually reached the number they once thought would finally feel like enough. Most of them will tell you quietly that the goalpost simply moved again. Meanwhile, something quietly happens to a heart that keeps waiting for later. It doesn't stay neutral while it waits. It slowly tightens. Holding on to money just in case starts to feel safer than releasing it. And that instinct, if you let it run unchecked for years, doesn't just affect your wallet. It reshapes how you see everything you have: your time, your attention, your relationships. Scarcity becomes the lens you look through, even when, by any honest measure, you actually have enough. You start counting what leaves your hands more carefully than you count what fills them. And slowly, without meaning to, closed becomes your resting posture instead of your exception. There's a story in the book of 1 Kings that speaks directly into this. There was a severe famine in the land, no rain for years, and a widow in a town called Zarephath was down to her very last handful of flour and a small amount of oil. She was gathering sticks to make one final meal for herself and her son, so they could eat it, and then, she assumed, simply die. That was the plan. One last meal, and then the end. Picture that for a moment. Not budgeting tight, not cutting back on extras, actually planning her own death because there was nothing left. And in that very moment, God sent a prophet named Elijah to her, and he asked her to make him bread first before she made anything for herself or her son. Not after, not from the surplus she didn't have. First, from the very last of what she had. Now, if you read that quickly, it can sound harsh. It can even sound unfair. A prophet showing up and asking a starving widow for food before her own child eats. But look at what Elijah says right alongside the request. He tells her that if she gives first, her flour will not run out and her oil will not dry up until the famine ends. He's not asking her to give away her security. He's inviting her to discover where her security actually comes from. And she does it. She takes the very last of what she has and she gives it away first, before her own need is met. And Scripture tells us that the flour did not run out and the oil did not dry up for as long as the famine lasted. Her jar didn't refill because she budgeted carefully. It didn't refill because she waited until she had margin. It refilled because she gave first, trusting a provision she couldn't see yet. Every single day of that famine, she reached into a jar that should have been empty, and every single day there was enough. Here's the shift I want to offer you today. Generosity was never designed to be the overflow of abundance. It was designed to be an act of faith, sometimes practiced especially in scarcity, because that's exactly where its meaning becomes undeniable. Anyone can give from extra. It takes almost no faith at all to give away money you were never going to miss. But giving from what feels like not enough, that requires trust in a provider bigger than your bank balance. That doesn't mean giving recklessly, ignoring your family's real needs, or pretending wisdom doesn't matter. Scripture is full of wisdom about planning, saving, and stewarding well. The same Bible that tells the widow's story also tells us the wise store up for the future. This isn't a call to abandon responsibility. It means examining whether you've quietly made enough into a moving target that generosity has to wait behind indefinitely, always one step further away than wherever you currently stand. So what does this actually look like practically in your everyday life, not in a famine, not with a prophet standing at your door? Let's walk through it.
First, give something before you feel ready. Not because readiness is bad, but because waiting for readiness often becomes an excuse that never actually resolves. Even a small amount, given intentionally and immediately, breaks the pattern of endless postponement. The widow didn't wait until the famine ended to start giving. She gave in the middle of it, while it was still uncertain, while the outcome was still unknown. Second, separate generosity from your feeling of financial security. These are two different things, and we tend to fuse them together without realizing it. You can be financially tight and still be generous. You can be financially comfortable and still be closed-fisted. The condition of your bank account and the condition of your heart are not the same measurement, even though it feels like they should be. Some of the most generous people you'll ever meet have very little. Some of the most closed-fisted people you'll ever meet have plenty. Third, practice giving in a way that costs you something noticeable, at least occasionally. Not recklessly, not to the point of harming your family's real needs, but enough that you actually feel it. There's a kind of spiritual muscle that only grows through resistance. Giving only from what you'll never miss doesn't build trust. It doesn't require any. Trust is only actually exercised when there's genuine uncertainty about whether the jar will refill. Fourth, give consistently, not just when a crisis or a compelling story moves your emotions in the moment. Consistent, planned generosity, like a percentage set aside regularly, trains your heart in a way that sporadic emotional giving never quite does. The widow's provision was daily, not a single dramatic act. Generosity, at its best, becomes rhythm, not a rare event you rise to only when something moves you. Fifth, watch your language around money, even the language you use only in your own head. Notice how often the phrase, "I can't afford to give," shows up, compared to, "I can't afford not to." Those two phrases reveal two very different postures to the same bank account, and the posture usually shapes the behavior long before the numbers ever do. Sixth, remember that generosity isn't only measured in money. Time given to someone who needed it, attention given fully instead of distracted, presence offered when it would have been easier to withdraw. These are also acts of an open hand. If money feels genuinely tight right now, the posture of generosity can still be practiced in ways that cost you something real, even while your finances are healing. Seventh, don't let comparison steal your generosity before it even begins. It's easy to look at someone who gives large amounts publicly and think your small act doesn't matter, or to look at someone who gives nothing and use that as an excuse to give less yourself. Scripture never measures generosity by the size of the gift alone. It measures it by what the gift actually cost the person giving it. A small amount from someone with very little can carry more weight in the eyes of God than a large amount from someone who never felt it at all. But here's what I really want you to walk away with today, more than the practical steps. The widow's jar didn't refill because she had unusually strong faith or unusually good math. It refilled because the God she gave first was already faithful, whether she felt certain about it or not. Her obedience didn't create the provision, it simply positioned her to receive what was already being offered. That matters because so many of us treat generosity like a transaction, as if giving is what obligates God to provide. But look closely at the story again. Elijah didn't say, "Give, and then I'll see what I can do." He said the flour wouldn't run out before she ever lifted a hand to obey. The promise came before her obedience proved anything to anyone. She wasn't earning provision, she was simply being invited to trust it, to act as though the promise was already true before she had any evidence beyond the prophet's word. So here's the question I want to leave sitting with you today, more than the practical steps. What if your "not enough" isn't actually a signal to close your hand tighter, but an invitation to open it and discover what you didn't know was already being provided? What if the tightness you feel around money isn't really about the numbers at all, but about who or what you actually trust to keep the flour from running out? This week, I want you to try something small but intentional. Find one act of generosity that costs you something you'll genuinely notice, not recklessly, but real enough to feel. It could be time, it could be money, it could be attention given fully to someone who needed it. And before you give it, say this quietly: "Lord, I don't fully understand how the jar keeps refilling, but I trust that you are the one refilling it, not my own careful math." That's it. Not a leap into recklessness, just a step of trust taken with an open hand instead of a closed fist. If this spoke to something in you today, share it with someone who's been quietly waiting for enough before they feel free to give. And subscribe, because we're going to keep walking through what real financial peace looks like, rooted in Scripture, one open hand at a time. Until next time, remember this: your hand was never meant to stay closed until the math felt safe enough. Generosity was never about what's left over. It was always about who you trust to fill the jar. And the same God who sustained a widow through a famine, one day at a time, has not forgotten what you're holding on to right now either. Go in peace.